Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, 5 African leaders head to Burundi to push for talks on ending the country's 10 deadly months of political crisis. Also, the UN's chief visits South Sudan on the final leg of his tour of the region and calls on warring sides to do more to respect a fragile peace deal. And we meet the young Egyptians looking for their big shot and hoping the recipe lies in the right balance of style, selfies, and a hefty set of online followers. Now, the leaders of Ethiopia, Gabon, Mauritania, Senegal and South Africa have arrived in Burundi for 2 days of mediation aimed at ending 10 months of unrest there. Over 400 people have been killed and hundreds of thousands have fled over turmoil sparked by President Nkurunziza's controversial third term in office. The visiting leaders are part of an African Union delegation agreed on in January after Burundi refused to allow peacekeepers in. Our correspondent tells us more.
Peacekeepers, or the lack thereof, is a very key issue with regard to Burundi. We know that, of course, the African Union heads of state met at the end of January. There was a Peace and Security Council meeting, and the proposal to send peacekeepers was squashed. That was a proposal that was originally made in December by the Peace and Security Council in the wake of significant violence and uptick in violence in Burundi. Now, that violence involved clashes between security forces and dissidents around military bases, and also security forces sweeping into opposition neighborhoods, killing dozens of young men, including some with gunshot wounds here. So effectively summary executions. Now, it was within that context that it had been expected that peacekeepers would be sent. Clearly, that's not going to happen now. That's something that's widely acknowledged. So really, the AU has lost its firepower on this issue, and there's unlikely to be significant concessions either by the regime or increasingly armed dissidents. Also, interestingly, today, Human Rights Watch released a new report saying that there has been a change in the pattern of alleged abuse by the security forces. Now, what they're doing, according to Human Rights Watch, is that instead of shooting people dead on the streets, is taking them away quietly and disappearing them. That's perceived opponents of the regime. So a very bleak outlook and backdrop at the moment, and difficult to see any progress despite the presence of Jacob Zuma, the president of South Africa, on the ground.
Now, the UN's chief arrived in South Sudan on Thursday on the final leg of his tour of the region. Ban Ki-moon called on leaders on both sides of the country's 2-year civil war to commit to the most recent peace deal that was signed back in August. Now, the battling has killed thousands and forced millions from their homes. The agreement between the camps of President Salva Kiir and rebel leader Riek Machar has, though, failed to stop the fighting. The UN's spokesperson in South Sudan earlier told me that though the organisation is still hopeful the deal has legs, the situation is dire.
Well, it is clear that we're facing a difficult situation. We're facing a difficult political situation with the parties delaying the implementation of the peace agreement. We're facing a terrible humanitarian situation with over 2 million people displaced in the countries and 2.8 million people facing food insecurity, and we're facing a problem of delivering to the people because we don't have much access, which is forbidden by the government and by the opposition. I think that's part of the messages that Ban Ki-moon has been addressing when he met the president, the access, the humanitarian situation and the political situation. He was here only for a couple of hours, but he met the president, and he also met, but he also called the leader of the opposition and urged them to form a transitional government as per the agreement that has been signed in August. The UN is optimistic by nature. Is it going to be an easy situation? No, it's not easy. Is it moving forward? We're urging the parties to move the process forward. This country needs peace. This country has everything to succeed, and this country is bogged down by war for the last 2 years. It's far too much for the people of South Sudan who's been fighting for their independence and haven't yet enjoyed the fruits of independence.
Now, a soldier in the Chadian contingent of the UN's peacekeeping force in northern Mali killed his commander and an army doctor after opening fire on them on Thursday. Now, the attack at the Kidal base reportedly happened after weeks of tensions over living conditions. The UN site has been at the forefront of the body's MINUSMA mission in the country. Our correspondent spent time there and witnessed some of the pressures troops face.
Kidal airfield has just reopened a year after it was destroyed by demonstrators. A heavily armoured convoy crosses the town to reach the UN camp. The order is, whatever happens, don't get out.
Yeah, well, quite a few IEDs have gone off here, really.
On this road?
In different places.
Armed groups and jihadist sleeper cells rule just paces from the MINUSMA camp. Homemade explosives, rockets, mortars and suicide bombs are used against the peacekeepers. The most recent attack, claimed by Ansar Dine, killed 7 and injured 53 people.
We are not safe just staying in the camp. We are going to have to try to take control of the surrounding area. That should reduce, maybe not stop, but reduce the attacks on the camp. I do think we need to deploy outside the camp to protect it.
Reinforcing the camp is one thing, but the UN mission says it's short of armoured vehicles to patrol. The call is urgent. The mission's under constant threat.
The Kidal camp is one of the most attacked UN camps in the world. We suspect the methods of attack are evolving, so we need defenses to match. We have to be ahead of the terrorists.
Jihadist attacks have risen in northern Mali. They're better and better planned, say the military. The one on the 12th of February was the deadliest so far on this camp in Kidal.
At least 3 people, including a child, were killed in a mortar attack on the Somali presidential palace on Thursday. Extremist group Al-Shabaab claimed responsibility for the explosions in Mogadishu. The militants want to overthrow the UN-backed government. Also on Thursday, Somalia's president said that at least 180 Kenyan peacekeepers were killed when Al-Shabaab extremists attacked their base last month. Kenya has since denied the figures and is yet to release an official death toll. Now, the Confederation of African Football held a meeting in Zurich on Thursday to set out the party line for its 54 members on the eve of FIFA's presidential election. Now, the African bloc is expected to back Sheikh Salman bin Ibrahim Al Khalifa of Bahrain as its candidate to replace disgraced FIFA president Sepp Blatter in the wake of a major corruption scandal.
It's on the basis of what were the views of different candidates. We felt that Sheikh Salman would be the person who could most assist CAF, primarily because him being president of the Asia Football Confederation, they also share the same difficulties that we do in Africa, and we felt that the only way to bring about real changes in FIFA, you need to come together with another confederation so that we can address the issues that concern African football.
Now, a growing number of young Egyptians looking for their big shot, hoping that their recipe for fame and celebrity lies in the right balance of style, selfies, and a hefty set of online followers. Take a look.
A change of wardrobe in an upscale Cairo park. These Egyptian teenagers want to look their best for the camera. Their objective, to get as many likes as possible on social media and ultimately become celebrities. But their wardrobe is not to everyone's taste. Undeterred by this approval, it's the success of people like Sonic Diab that keeps them motivated. The 21-year-old Egyptian model has joined a modern global phenomenon by finding fame through social media. He started off getting photographed in high school and now has 2 commercials under his belt.
Some people in Egypt become famous without acting or singing, but simply because they get photographed, because they take care of their looks. All it takes is having a good photographer who can get a nice and clean picture. So they start making a name for themselves, getting more likes on their photos.
Mostly hailing from Cairo's impoverished neighborhoods, more and more of these teens look to the internet for success. On Facebook and Instagram, special accounts have even been created. But with their provocative style, they're challenging taboos in a conservative Muslim society,
المجتمع المصري بشكل عام مجتمع بيرفض التغيير وبيرفض التنوع.
Egyptian society does not tolerate change. It doesn't accept diversity. Sometimes this rejection turns into violence, and other times into state punishment. This is not the first time it has happened. In the 90s, some people who played heavy metal were accused of being devil worshippers, and they were sent to jail by the regime.
But with the Egyptian economy in shambles, many see this as their only hope for success.
Looking good. Well, that is it, though, for Across Africa. Thanks very much for staying with us. And more coming up after a short break. Take care.
Reporters. Welcome on board the Charles de Gaulle, with a crew of over 1,900, 262 metres long, and a flight deck bigger than a football pitch. The French aircraft carrier sailed from Toulon in November last year in response to terror attacks in Paris. After taking up position in the Persian Gulf, it now leads coalition forces in the war against Islamic State group. From pilots to maintenance technicians and flight crews, security is a priority. Our cameras take you behind the scenes for a close-up on daily life on board.
Reporters on France 24 and France24.com.